But
Cool.
Parv, you want to introduce the movie we watched this week?
Yeah, sure. So, it was my movie this week, and I decided to choose Last Black Man in San Francisco because
I don't know how much longer we can keep doing this.
But I'm not leaving. I'm the last one left.
I'm with you, brother.
I decided to choose Last Black Man in San Francisco because for reasons I will explain later. But
Oh.
what was your guys' overall reactions, responses?
Um,
Yeah.
Emma can go first.
No, I have to think about that. You go first, JJ.
Oh, seriously? Okay. Dang, that's a lot of pressure. Well, this was my second viewing of it, and I think this movie is still like severely underwatched, like and underknown about, if that makes any sense. It's on Amazon Prime, if anyone who's listening to this hasn't seen it.
And Canopy.
Oh, really? Oh, that's very
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, so it is technically now like an educational, important type of movie
Yeah.
then. If
Nice.
it's on Canopy,
Do you
that's
think
great.
Phil Wagner put it on Canopy like he requested it?
You're gonna shout out Phil Wagner like that?
Yes.
He was. Do you want to explain who that is, or should we just give no
Oh.
context to Phil Wagner?
He was our film critical study professor and my film history professor. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, but this was a movie we had to do for one of our classes, but I didn't watch it for our class when he was assigned. I watched it a while back, but yeah, my reaction to it this time, compared to my first watch, is pretty much the same, which is like I liked the movie. It's like it would have been my choice for best cinematography last year, which is a really big compliment considering how many strongly shot films came out last year. But yeah, that's my favorite aspect of the film. But other than that, great performances. Some really strong themes here and there sprinkled throughout, but I was hoping Parvati could help elaborate more on that later because I know she has a lot to talk about.
For
But
sure.
yeah, I really like the two lead performances. They really carry the emotional like aspects of the film. And yeah, the film looks beautiful. If like there's one takeaway from that, it's how great the film looks. And it's just like stunning. Like it sort of reminds me of like a Tyler the Creator music video for like his Flower Boy days, but more realistic. But at the same time, it still feels hyper realistic because of that like intense digital cinematography. But in terms of story, I guess we're gonna talk more into that later. So I guess this is where
Yeah.
I'll cut myself off.
Cool.
But yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
Very
it was
nice.
also my second watch. So, and I feel the same. I like it. You know, the cinematography is definitely like what stands out to me. I love especially the lighting. I love how natural it is. It's
Mhm.
just very like, and the tones of the film with like the lighting are very earthy and natural, and I really like that. I think it's cool because sometimes when films try to do that, I feel like it can come across as a little bit boring, but they do it in such a way where it's so like rich and like beautiful to look at. So yeah, that's what I noticed more so this time
Cool.
around.
Nice. Okay. For a second, I was scared that you guys wouldn't like it just because your
I
reactions
hate
when
it.
I said what
No.
was like very like oh.
Oh,
yay.
I only do
was
that
I'm
like,
because
joking.
it's like a movie I've already seen. It's like
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Same.
But like
Gotcha,
I know you have a lot to talk about, which is why I was kind of excited. I want to know like
Yeah,
your thoughts on
same.
it.
Oh yeah.
I
But
love
yeah,
that.
what
I
were
love
some
it.
of the main points you wanted to break down about the movie,
Yeah.
So
or at least
Well,
like talking
okay, well,
points we
first
can
of
jump
all-
off of?
right. So I think all of us like you both brought up how like pretty it is. First of all, with like visual elements. And Emma talked about like the lighting and stuff too.
I
And I
love it.
think the first time around, that was definitely the first thing I paid attention to. Because I think it's in the very beginning when the preacher man is like standing up on his box and the lighting on him just looks so like surreal,
Mhm.
and the shots just in the very beginning like set the tone for me just because everything feels like a painting almost,
Yeah.
or like a portrait of something that happened in the past yet it's set in 2019.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
I think that just like sets like such an entirely different mood of San Francisco to me, just because it's like people who were living in the past of San Francisco, but they're living there now in what has become like a newly created San Francisco that has been gentrified from its origins, which is like basically what the entire film is about too. And I just think it's really cool that I can feel that emotion within the first few frames that I really see too. So that's, I think, just the style of the entire film really helps just put forth the whole, like, all of the themes that come in with it too. I don't know if that's how you guys felt about the cinematography too, but
Yeah, if we want to talk about that opening scene for a second, just like even like the first two shots is conflict. It starts off with like a little girl and she's looking up and it's like, oh, what's she looking at? And it's a dude in a hazmat suit. And it's a crazy like hyper realistic type of thing, but it just shows like a conflict there, like what's going on. Why isn't she in like a suit? What's the danger here? And then you see like they're cleaning up the ocean, and then it leads into the beautiful scene of them going into the city. But yeah, I get what you mean in terms of the style just jumping out right at you, and like the themes immediately also from the movie about gentrification and like the conflict, which was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And like what you're saying about the lighting, it's like it's so, they use lighting so well in it, is what I was trying to say. But it's just like beautiful, and it really does make almost every single shot in it look like a painting, or even not even like a painting, or like a play in a way. Like later on, obviously, when they do the play, but even before that, it looks like that. It looks like there's these spotlights kind of on the characters, and it doesn't look unnatural, but it also doesn't, look supernatural. No, I meant natural either, but it's cool. I love it. Definitely, it looks really beautiful.
I like you realizing supernatural was a word.
I know. I got really sad because I was like, I didn't put a long enough pause between the words. No. I try.
Yeah. I agree with that. And also going more into like the first scene itself too, the preacher in his first, like, this is the first time you see him like really speaking too. And just in that whole first verse, you kind of they kind of make him seem like he's just this crazy man that's like saying random things, which is like very common to see in San Francisco and like most big cities, I think. But if you really like listen to his words and things too, it almost acts as like a foreshadowing of what you're gonna see within the rest of the movie too, and like introducing all of the themes and things too. Like one of the quotes that he said that like stood out to me, which was like at the end of his little spiel, was, if you venture into their San Francisco where they pillage for gold, remember your truth in the city of facades. And it's just, it like introduces basically the entire story and like all of the themes, I think, in the entire thing, because they're just like recurring facades, recurring like just showings of like the fact that people are faking so much over everything else, which comes up in a lot of instances in this movie.
Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
In terms of his like sermon, the first time I watched it, I didn't really notice what he was saying, but this time I listened to his words, and yeah, I was surprised how spot on they were in terms of the themes of the film. And just having that character just stay like recurring was also really just neat. But yeah, it really does set the tone for the entire thing, just to have his like I like how you described it as a verse, like play over just the entire intro and just kind of set the mood for the entire movie. It's really one of the like great opening scenes of like last year. Yeah, I know. Go ahead.
Okay. It also reminded me of a lot of Greek like plays. This is just random, but I know because like plays like has a big like role in the film. But a lot of Greek plays have like odes at the beginning where characters unrelated from the plot speak to the audience and basically tell the story of what's going to happen, but in a more like poetic, theatrical way. And I felt like this was kind of a nod towards that, which I thought was really cool, because I was like, wow, I like how they're keeping the concept of like plays a central part of the plot as well. And obviously it plays bigger roles in the end of the film, but it's cool. I really like that, because I remember studying that in one of my classes, and I thought it was just really cool that they did that, just like telling the story before you see it. But it's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, I was actually reading more into the movie as well when I was like just researching it after I first watched it too, and that leads into like, so you brought up like Greek like odes and things, but You know how like they also have like Greek choruses, so it's like groups of people that
Yeah,
are
exactly.
randomly speaking about. I don't really know what their purpose is specifically, but it is to help the story in some way.
They drive the story forward. They keep the audience like basically on understanding what's going on, because some people probably would be
Yeah.
lost, I guess. But you know,
To reference a past film we've watched, like in Dunkirk, the two random captains on the pier would be like the
yes,
whatever.
exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
you can
okay,
see
okay.
that as that
Got it.
exactly.
Oh,
But-
okay. Well, I guess this analysis doesn't make sense then. But like, there
Oh.
was I read no, I read this analysis that someone else published, and it was saying that you know the group of guys that are always like yelling outside of Maud's house.
Okay.
The person described them as like a Greek chorus, but I guess they don't really like center you in the story. They're just kind of there
I mean,
in a way.
it kind of drives it forward, I think. And I mean, they basically are kind of like just like they comment on what's going on. That's also like another thing that the Greek like choruses did. They not only like, well, basically it honestly is them just recapping what's going on or saying something that relates to what's going on, and I feel like that's what those characters were doing, which is really interesting. Again, that's so cool. I didn't realize there was so much like Greek influence on this film. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I feel like at first they just seem like just like another like group of lackeys, like adventure boys type of just loitering the whole time. But like yeah, they do eventually start driving the B story forward, which takes like a bigger prominence in the second half of the film. So they do definitely come into play in terms of like centering the story.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's really cool.
And also I know, because when you first start watching it too, like I remember when I first saw it, I was wondering like what they were doing in this whole story and like why they kept coming back, because I just thought they were like, oh, characterization of San Francisco, like this is just a little part of it, but then they kept coming back and I was like, God, they're so annoying. And then I'm glad that they brought them back in like a more important way to talk about a lot of like sub themes almost.
Yeah.
Like I remember one thing that I remember thinking about for what they serve was how they're always talking so much, but they're literally saying nothing. Like nothing they say actually means anything, but they say like they're just talking so much. And so that was like one thing to me where it was like people who just speak because they can, but they mean absolutely nothing with their words. And like that was one big thing versus like Mont and Jimmy, they like barely speak, but when they do speak, it's like things that actually mean something to them. So that was like one, they kind of acted like almost as like a foil of representing people that actually care about things in a world of people who don't, almost like they live in a world where they pretend to it's like that quote in La La Land where they say that people what's the quote? It's they worship everything but they value nothing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Seb's
so
quote
that's
about Los
kind of,
Angeles.
and that's how they kind of feel to me and things. And also just like a subplot almost of like toxic masculinity and where that comes from, and like what those kinds of pressures can really lead you to doing, as we see of the fate of Kofi later on in the movie too.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's all like those characters are such a like integral part of the story, which they see that at the very beginning, but they are like some of the most important characters in the story, which I think kind of contrasts to earlier what we were talking about, like the choruses, because apparently like the choruses should not be regarded as the actors. They're like just the integral part of the story. So I guess it is kind of similar because they are like characters obviously in the story, but at the same time, would you consider them fully like there? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, the whole thing has like this otherworldly feel to it. Like the
Yes.
whole Greek, like I didn't even think about that, but like
I know,
even just like
I-
picturing like the images, I can just see them like hung up somewhere in like a museum because
Yeah.
they're that beautiful, and like you can relate the
Yes.
themes to that as well. And I
Mhm.
like that you guys are finding similarities to like Greek plays and
Yeah,
this film.
you could totally see one of the shots in this movie like as a fresco on like a
Yeah,
ceiling.
exactly. Yeah.
Like
mhm.
that's so cool. I love that. That's
Even
really
like the
cool.
name of the film, like that could be the title of the painting. Like it's the last
Exactly,
black
that's
man in
so
San
cool.
Francisco. Yes.
Exactly.
Which is so fun. I love that. I think it's very rare that you find a film that tries to do like the cinematography in a style that they did in this film,
Mhm.
which is a shame because it's so beautiful and it's so nice to look at. And there's so many shots where you're just like, oh, I want that on my wall, please. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can we just like frame that? That's just, thank you.
Definitely. And that's kind of like how the movie poster itself is done too. It's like an animation. It was done to look like a famous black author's like book covers.
Oh,
Actually.
I see. Mhm.
That's cool.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Is it the poster
Mhm.
of just the two characters like looking at that? Okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, it was done to his name was hold on. Yeah, his name was Walter Dean Myers, and he was an author who wrote a lot of stories about like African American children and things. So yeah, a lot of his book covers look exactly like the cover for Last Black Man in San Francisco. And I thought that was really cool. Because the movie also, they have a lot of like references and cameos of people, of like locals and of like African American locals from San Francisco and just like African American artists and things too, which was really cool to me. Yeah, and they really just paid tribute to San Francisco itself too, because the like origins of the movie are just really interesting to me too, because of how much of it is true.
Mm-hmm.
Like how Jimmy Fails is Jimmy Fails in real life, and like him and his family lived in a house similar to the one that they talk about in the movie. And his like the real Jimmy Fails, the reason why they wrote this story was because to him the house was kind of a symbol of like his family being together for the last time that he did see them, like together as a family. And then once they lost the house, they all kind of like broke apart, and he never really had that afterwards too. And so that's why him and oh my god, what is his name?
Mont?
Talbot? Wait, how do you pronounce
Joe
his last
Talbot,
name?
the director?
Joe Talbot. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And that's why him and Joe Talbot decided to write about it, because they actually met as teenagers in San Francisco, and so they like grew up together. And so like he wanted to tell the story, which I thought was really cute. And yeah.
That's really cool. I didn't know that. That's really fun. Huh.
Mm-hmm. More on like the origin of the movie and stuff too is Joe Talbot and Jimmy Fails, when they were talking about like making the movie and stuff too, they were talking about gentrification, obviously, because that's what the whole movie's about. And they were talking about the area of like Fillmore, which is like the area that Jimmy Fails' like original house was and stuff. And they were saying that like in the past when they were kids and things, that area used to be more of like a Harlem of the West, so like a really lively like African American neighborhood with like jazz and blues clubs and things. And he even like described it as like something out of a Spike Lee joint too, which was really interesting because you see like such a difference now if you actually go there in person, and even just in the movie if you see it too, which I think was just really interesting because like they could actually account for the differences that really happened that they're talking about in the movie and stuff too. So yeah, I just thought for me the movie feels very significant just because I feel like I've felt that kind of attachment to a city. Like I've felt that kind of attachment to Fremont. Not in the terms of like gentrification necessarily, but just the passion and like the overall just feeling so connected to a place, even if it just seems like the most ordinary place ever. Like I just feel like I've never seen a film that has exactly portrayed the same kind of love that someone can have for a city, or someone can have for just like a place that might not mean anything to somebody else, or might seem like something so different than what it used to be to somebody else. And I just don't think I've seen anything that has just quite accurately depicted something like that. So I just thought that was really cool.
Good
And
point. Like when you were saying all of that, I was thinking about it, and I love that. That's such a cool way to view the movie. I don't think I've ever like thought of it in that certain aspect, because I feel like everyone has like places like that where they hold very, very like close to their heart, and it's really cool to see that so perfectly depicted in a film. It's not done very often, which is really cool. Wow. Huh.
Yeah, you can
Like, gives it a
definitely
new
feel
light.
like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can definitely feel the love that like Jimmy has over the house and like just like that place that he used to like
Mhm.
hold so dear to his heart. And like the stuff you mentioned, like the Harlem of the West and just like that area
Yeah.
of like Fillmore, was that the street name? Like that's all like mentioned in the movie. So when you said it, I'm like, oh, that's what they said. So I'm like that how they incorporated all of that like into the film itself. And like in terms of like Joe Talbot and Jimmy Fail, like this is like their first movie, right? This is like their debut or whatever. It was very, very strong, very impressive, and I'm really excited
Yeah.
for whatever else they try to do.
yeah,
Very impressive.
I know that Jimmy Fails is about to be acting in a few more films in the future, so that's
Cool.
really
He was
exciting.
he was
Ooh.
great. I really like
Oh,
connected
yeah.
with his
Mhm.
character.
I
Yeah.
know, and I think it's crazy that it was his first time like acting in something too. Like it's his first time acting
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
a
that
film.
was
Well, he is
Wow.
kind of
As
like
himself.
he's as himself. Yeah. But you know, it's
Which
still,
I
think
you can
can
still
be
be
that
great.
still
difficult,
is
though.
hard.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
like
No,
I could never.
but there's like parts of the film that felt really natural to me, like especially with like dialogue. There's just like small little moments, like when they're talking to like the real estate guy, like Clayton, the guy from La La Land. He's like what's his name, Greg or something in La La Land.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, they're talking, and then they just bring up like what high schools they went to, and there's that little part about high school football. Just like it was just neat. It's just like a character moment, stuff
know.
like that.
Yeah. It just
Yeah.
feels real. It's like it's just such a very but also at the same time it doesn't, like you were saying earlier, it feels like you're watching something that's otherworldly, but at the
Mhm.
same time all the themes and the problems are so rooted in humanity that it's such a weird and really interesting contrast. I love it. It's so cool.
Yeah, I love that too. Yeah, I think it's just like the genuinity.
Genuine.
What's the word?
I don't think
I'll
genuinity is
restart
a
the
word.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a
What's
word
the
there.
I'm
okay,
leaving
okay,
this in.
Okay,
Please
okay.
do.
No.
The
Yeah, I think it's the
Yeah, no.
authenticity.
Oh,
Yes,
the-
yes.
boom! There you go. Got
There it
it.
is.
Yeah, it's more like the authenticity of like the world and the characters and things that really bring it in for me too, because also like there's the actors like casted in this too. It's a mix of like familiar and not so familiar faces too. So you have those people that are like familiar that you do see, but then it feels really driven by the people by the faces you don't really know, because you feel more attached to the story then rather than to the actors, which I often find myself in conflict with for like movies that have like star-studded casts or just like really big actors in them too. It feels a lot less genuine to me, and so I was just really glad that they decided to cast them like that as well. And yeah, and I just think it's very it really opens your eyes to like a history of places that you don't really think you need to know. Like I forgot that like San Francisco used to be a very like thriving African American community, and then the San Francisco that we know now is this giant like tech hub filled with like hippies and
Yeah.
new
Yeah,
coffee
it's very
shops
different
and
now.
yeah, exactly. And so it feels like a tribute to that also, like from people who have actually lived in what it used to be like. And also it just feels like a wake up call to people like me who have always assumed that San Francisco was like this place in the middle of like Silicon Valley where people like are creating startup companies and things, but that's not really what San Francisco was. And
Yeah.
it's just really interesting to me to see that.
Yeah,
I
no.
Yeah.
love that.
Oh.
That's so cool. No, no, no. Go ahead, JJ. You're good.
Oh no, you were already into it. There, I
No,
did the
Oh my
double
God.
hand back.
I put
Oh,
a pin in it.
ah.
I got my thought later. It's all good.
I was gonna say how hard it is to just imagine people like for me, like it's like people actually live in the city of San Francisco, like because like for me it's just like
Yes.
everyone lives outside the city, you know, like
Yeah,
in, like
exactly.
yeah, Fremont, like Oakland, like everywhere in the Bay Area except for
Mhm.
like the city itself. It just seems like
Yeah.
more of like a tourist thing to me.
Yeah.
But it's crazy to like realize that yeah, people actually were living there and they were like systematically like taken out, like moved
I
out of their
know.
homes. And like the film does such like a strong way of just showing that. And it's not to always talk about the opening scene, but it's just so good. But just the way the
Yeah.
people itself, they show people and it transitions
Yes.
from
Yeah.
like a predominantly like African American group of people into like these like white business people and like
Yeah.
everything like that once they move into the
Mhm.
city. It was
Mhm.
just a really crazy like contrast, like just showing the move from area to area and how these people may have been like displaced, which is really neat.
Mhm.
But yeah, Emma was saying
Yeah.
something and she
Oh no,
triple-handed
it's
it
fine.
back.
I was gonna say about like places having a lot more history than you can like presume. I love that. I love whenever I mean because my family lives in Ireland, so whenever I go to Ireland, there's just so much history everywhere you go. Like literally you can go somewhere and there's a castle there. Wow, that's weird. And then you like know all the history about that. But like it's really cool and I've always been just fascinated with just staring at buildings and just thinking about like, oh, who used to live there? What used to what did they used to do? Like all of that. I love that. And I think that I don't know, I think the movie kind of captures that a little bit, which is cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, just real quick
Yeah.
again about the opening scene and buildings and what you were saying. Just
Wow.
like they were,
No.
it was contrasting the house with him. Like it
Yeah.
has like our same like brims or like sweat. The way it moves, we move, and it's a great. I know it's a great metaphor about everything.
We are these homes. Their eyes, their pointed brims. We move as they move. Our sweat soaked in the wood, gilded in our image. This is our home. Our home. Our home.
I do agree though, like yeah, like the pointed brims with like the witch hat and like the eyes with the windows and like his chain with like the gold trim on the house too. Like I just thought it was so gorgeous like to see it for the first time when I did, and then
True.
the second time I was like, oh, it's so good. I love that part. Like I always forget how much I like that part. And also like the score that happens during that time too is just awesome, which I
Yes.
love too.
Oh,
Yeah, the
yes,
music is
definitely.
great in the
I-
movie. The music is
So
so
good.
I
good.
love it. I love it so
really
much.
beautiful.
Mhm.
Very beautiful. I remember the first time I watched it, my TV glitched out and the whole first 15 minutes of the film was completely black, and I thought that was on
Wow,
purpose.
so experimental.
I know, but I was like, oh, this is
Wait.
kind of powerful in a way, because I was just sitting it was kind of, I know, it was funny though, but it kind of reminded me of, because I don't know if you guys have ever like listened to like old radio shows where you just sit
Oh, I
and like
see, yeah,
listen to the
mhm.
plots. So it felt like that, which I thought was on purpose, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. But then when I figured out
How
that
long?
no,
Yes, please. How
Yeah.
long until you're like?
it was
"Maybe I should
15
be saying
minutes.
something."
It was 15 minutes.
Oh
And
my
then
god.
I watched the beginning and I was like, wow, that takes a lot of like skill to have your writing be able to like not have to have like the visuals along with it, because it was really cool. And I recommend to anyone just listening to the first bit, because it was cool. I liked that experience. But then I rewatched it because obviously there's a lot that goes on in the first bit that I did not see.
Please watch it with visuals first.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
that's important. But
I'm sorry. That just
it's
reminded
cool.
me of like, oh, I set the saturation on my TV down to 0 and watched the movie in black and white. It's not better.
gosh.
It's just different.
What?
But I'm.
What?
But yeah, Do we want to go into segments, or are there any more? Like, I guess we haven't talked about themes like about gentrification and masculinity, which I thought were the two main themes of the film.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, just one more point about the opening scene, actually. So, the opening scene happens in this place called Hunter's Point, and that's where Jimmy Fails in real life spent some time in like this impoverished, like isolated neighborhood, and that's where most since like the 40s apparently Black San Franciscans have lived there too. And so before the movie opened, him and Jimmy Fails and Talbot went back to that spot. And you know how in the beginning the preacher is talking about how the water's been dirtier than the devil's mouth for 50 years, but finally they're cleaning it up. And so it was a similar thing happening where that area was put on a list for really like toxic water areas that needed to be cleaned. It was put on a list in 1989, but in 2019, right before the movie came out, they had just put up a sign saying that it was going to be cleaned. So it kind of like shows you the real parallels of what they're talking about in the movie and in real life. So I just thought that was a really important point to look at, because I assumed that one of the reasons they made the movie was because they started seeing that, but they actually saw it happen after they had created it already and it was about to be like published too. So I just thought that was so cool.
I watched a really interesting documentary a while ago, and it was about like more like what that kind of like what's going on with that, where I mean not only just like toxic water, but also like there was this one battery power plant in, I can't remember what city it was. It could be LA. I can't remember if it was. But they had for years all the air had been like polluted in this one area, and it's like really bad, and it got in the soil, and like kids were playing in the soil and like outside, and then they would get like, or like mothers would be walking around and then their child would be born with birth defects and stuff like that. And they knew about it for years and years. Like they knew about it in the 80s, kind of around that time as well, and still nothing has been really fixed. They've kind of like started re-soiling certain areas, but not at the same scale, just because they don't think it's important. And in that documentary, it was talking about not only like that one area. That was the one that stuck out to me most, because it went most in detail about that. But I mean, there's so many areas that are dealing with the same things, and it's so like pathetic how it's just like brushed under like the surface. Like no one really knows about that, and that's so horrible. And like the businesses just think that it's fine, and that's horrible, and I hate that. And it's so sad. No, yeah.
Yeah,
I
think
feel like
it
there's
definitely
always these stories.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, just like the Flint, Michigan water
Oh,
cases
yeah.
too. Just all of it. And I think I'm really glad they put this in, because I feel like that's like a really central part of where all of this comes from too.
Yeah.
Of like people only realizing the harm that like the not caring for like these impoverished like cities, where that harm goes to and who that directly harms and things too. And just how like that's such a central part of the way that they live. I'm just really glad they included that, because I feel like people think about it. They're like, oh yeah, Flint, Michigan had that water issue problem thing, but we don't really care about it because it's not happening to us. And so I'm just really glad that they included that, because it seems like a really small detail, but it's actually really important. So
No, yeah, I didn't know how much of that was like a real problem, like
oh yeah,
in,
it's
that area.
Yeah, that, and also like how they always show like some house or another has been like burnt to the ground.
Oh yeah,
too.
That's great. I just
just really.
I mean, it's not great, but I love that in the movie. No, but can I just like? Oh, sorry. Yeah, but in terms of like the toxic water, just like there's how you talk about how it doesn't like affect people, but like you can tell it affects their community somewhat, because like the part where he's like on the boat, that reminds me of the Tyler the Creator music video, and like a four-eyed fish jumps on the boat, and it looks really like it's very off-putting. But then it cuts from that scene to him working at the fish market. It's just a great like cut and juxtaposition. It shows like these toxic problems actually do affect the community that they live in.
Yeah. And I was like, the class that I watched that documentary in, it was a geography class, and it was on the section about geographic racism. like everywhere, and it was really fascinating because we were just sad but fascinating because it's just like it's really crazy all that goes into it. It's I don't know. I think it's interesting though, and the movie definitely talks about it in a very realistic way.
Yeah, and I like that they kind of do it in a way where it's not like an anger that's necessarily targeted at anyone specifically, but it's targeted towards like a group, like those who
exactly
like have the ability to like choose their water as dumping grounds, choose their water as like a place where we're gonna test out a nuclear bomb, like possibly.
They built the bomb
like,
right there.
Like yeah, so I just think it's cool because it feels like it's calling out this group of people, but it doesn't feel like it's targeting anyone, if that makes sense. In a way.
Interesting.
Like I don't feel like
I don't
it's
know.
specifically
I think it
attacking
is targeted.
someone.
Oh, I would
No, like
disagree.
I think it's targeted, but not like it doesn't feel like it's attacking someone. It just feels like this is what's been happening and you guys need to like talk about it. That's how it felt like to me.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's always been happening. Like, it's been happening for a long time. So I guess now for most people, it's seen as like normal, which it shouldn't be. And I think more people are becoming aware to it. Although it's still one of those problems where I feel like, sadly, for years, it'll probably not be addressed because too many people don't care, which is pathetic. And it's like businesses have so much power and money, and honestly, businesses control cities to a certain extent. So it takes a lot to have stuff like that happen, have people become more aware to it and go against that.
Right.
But,
yeah, and also going off of like what I said before about how they were in the area of like Hunters Point. So before they were making the movie, before like when they were going location scouting, I believe, they were like looking on that street for spots that they could be like shooting and stuff, right? And during the time they were gonna start construction down the street for this new area of luxury homes.
Ew.
And and so like they begged those people to like pause construction for the sake of them being able to like actually shoot there during the time too, but also to like keep up with like the morality of the city and like how they felt like preserving the city as much as they could for the film as well too, and also just within themselves too, because, and I think they said you can document these places that we love, but in some ways it sometimes feels like all you can do to at least commit them to memory. And so they're basically talking about how those who have lived in the real San Francisco can remember it the way that it used to be. But in reality, it's never going to stay that way because people are always going to be trying to like recreate it, make it anew, change how it was, change the history of it and things like that. And I just think everything about this film really like commits to those themes of like gentrification and people trying to take what's not theirs and turn it into something else and things too. Like not even just with the actual story, but how it was made too in the process of.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really cool. That adds a lot more to the film than I like had previously thought of. That's really cool. Well, yeah.
But yeah, in terms of like the gentrification whole message of it, I just like at the end of the film, like near the end, they like reveal that like his grandfather like himself didn't even actually build the house, which I found such an interesting detail to like include, well, not detail, but story point in general to include. Yeah, I just in terms, it's like it makes you put the whole thing in perspective. Like it's like who even really lived there? You know, like who does this like really belong to? And it's just like one of the more stronger themes that I think the film really like touches on and explores. Yeah, just there's so much in terms of gentrification in this film, like especially in terms of just like the detail and like the production design and the people and just showing like the different communities around San Francisco. It was crazy.
I agree. Yeah, like I think when that point came up too, I think like everyone was like the initial shock of just learning that, but at the same time, it's like you're shocked, but at the same time, our main character knew. Like he knew. He just like he just fooled himself this entire time. Yeah, which I thought was so. It's it felt a lot different to me than like entirely revealing to someone that what they've believed in has been fake. It's telling someone what they've believed in is fake, but it's because they made it up for themselves. And I feel like that's a whole different level of like wanting to want something so badly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why this movie, like the first time I watched it, after I finished watching it, I kind of sobbed about it because I was so like, I had like such an emotional reaction to it of like I just felt the pain in how badly he wanted this thing to be his, but it was just never going to be. Like in reality, it was never going to be. And it was his at a certain point, but it was never going to be his ever again. And I think that just like broke my heart because of how people talk about if you want to succeed, you just have to work really hard towards what you want. But sometimes that's just not the reality of things. Sometimes it's just you're going to be put in situations where you literally will never be able to attain something or get something that you really want. And that's like the hard, terrible truth about a lot of things too. And I think this is like a perfect explanation to negate that saying too, because if you're put in like a certain social class or you're put in a certain group that like diminishes your abilities to just get to a certain point, regardless of how much hard work you want to put into it, like it's just really heartbreaking to see that because it really can't happen sometimes, you know?
Oh yeah, it happens
Yeah.
all the time, and that's like it's heartbreaking. I think it makes that last like the final like act of the film so heartbreaking because I agree. I remember the first time I watched it, I was pretty emotionally distraught over it all because it hits so hard because you're kind of with him the whole time, just like hoping like that one day he'll like get the house and stuff, and you're like, well, yeah, you know, it is he built the house, even though kind of you can assume that it's type of like unreliable narrator type of situation going on. But
yeah, but you see how hard he does work for it, you know? Like
exactly,
you can tell he like actually cares about the whole.
Exactly. It means a lot to him, and so it means a lot to you as the audience, and you're watching it, and you feel so passionate about this house, even though like you're not really obviously in the story.
Yeah, exactly.
But
and like so much of his mindset is just focused on it too, that even when he does move into the house and all of us are thinking like, is this allowed? Like, is he gonna get caught? Like, what's gonna happen? Even when that's happening, you still root for him and you still really, really want him to be able to like stay there. And when I think just like seeing how much it means to him really makes you feel so heartbroken when you realize it was never his to begin with and it's never going to be his. And it's always going to belong to like the community that has transformed San Francisco to be able to be the only ones that can really have that kind of house in the first place too. And also going off of what JJ said about like the production design too, I love the production design because it felt the entire time that Jimmy was there, it felt like he really belonged in the space. Like it was where he belonged and what would make him feel like he belonged in the city entirely too, which was another one of the themes that the movie talks about, of like how him being able to attain the house would really make him feel like he finally belonged somewhere, because he just seemed like he was kind of going all over the place. He wasn't even living in his own home. He was living with a friend, but he was finally looking for something that would make him feel belonged. And it would have been staying in that house. And like the production design of the house makes you feel like he's so attached to it that there's literally nowhere else that he could possibly go. And
yeah, a character I found like really interesting and really kind of like heartbreaking was like Jimmy Fails' father, which I guess would be like the third. Jimmy Fails or the second. I don't know the lineage.
I think it's
the third. Okay, yeah, but like every time he mentions, like the first time he mentions the house to him, like when they're like doing the DVDs, it's like really like he's like doesn't want to talk about it because I think like the house was like a sort of failure to him, like he wasn't able to like keep it for his family. And like when he finally comes back to the house for the play, it's just really sad to see him just like be back in this place that he used to call his home. And like he talks about the chair that like Mont is carrying through, and he's like, yo, like I don't really care about the chair, but he really does. And he really does have like an attachment to the place. And just seeing that character shows that they're like, it was a love in the family, that this is like a place that really did belong to them. And they were like forced out because it's like you could tell like they do everything in their power to try to keep it, but they just couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and his talk with Jimmy's talk with his aunt at the end too, of like how much like they really wanted it and stuff too, and how she's saying that like if you decide to leave, she was asking him like, is this really what you want? Is this really what you want to like spend your entire life working for? And she could understand like why, because they all had it at some point and they all were thriving when they did have it. But yeah, and it was just really sad to me because it was like either like to her too, the option was either you decide to stay and work for this or you leave San Francisco altogether because otherwise there's like nothing else here for you, kind of. And I thought that was like another element that like kind of broke my heart too, because it was like if he can't have this part of San Francisco, then he doesn't want any other part of San Francisco.
Yeah, and that's basically the end of the film.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, like you could tell like he wasn't happy staying at Mont's home, and
No.
just like at the end, it's just like he can't exist in this city if he doesn't have that place, so he had to leave. Yeah, but like can we talk about? Let's talk about the ending.
Yeah.
It's a great ending. I really like it, but
I
I think
agree,
there's a lot up for interpretation. Obviously, with him just like rowing out into the bare ocean on a tiny little boat.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if you guys have any specific interpretation, but I sometimes I just think of it as him just leaving, but other times like you could honestly say he like killed himself in a way. Like there's a part where like Mont walks by like a vigil, like candlelight vigil of people, like they're walking, and like you assume that's for Kofi, but like what if that's for Jimmy? Like that's just like because they don't explicitly
Interesting.
say
Yeah, you're
anything.
right.
And his like note is kind of like a suicide note maybe, because it's like he's just like leaving, and like he's leaving his only like thanks for being my best friend type of deal.
Yeah.
And just him going out into the ocean is just like if you take that literally, like what is he gonna do, you know? So there has to be like something, I think, there.
True, I didn't think about it in that way. Because, like, I feel like the way that I interpret it the first two, like, time that I've seen it, and even now, I feel like when I rewatch it, I see it more as, like, a positive, like, he's going to find the place where he belongs. But also, at the same time, I kind of like that pessimistic, like, view on the ending. I think that's interesting. It changes the story a little bit. But also, does it? I don't know. Yeah.
So the first time I actually watched it, I had two different reactions both times actually. So the first time I watched it, and I'm not sure if like everyone sees it this way either, but the first time I watched it, I actually thought he killed himself just because it felt very like final in a way that he was just like, what else does he have to do in San Francisco that would really like give him the same amount of satisfaction aside from feeling so much disappointment and not being able to like get this house, get what would have made him feel like he belonged finally somewhere. And to me it felt like he killed himself just because even just like the part where he is like rowing out to sea and things, the way that it's shot makes it feel almost like it's in the dreamlike state almost. So that's what to me Mont thinks what happened to Jimmy almost. Like it feels like he Mont wants to think that he just rode away and is going off to find like another adventure, going off to find something else that gives him the same amount of passion, and that's why he left. Instead of, and as like a way of comforting Mont, instead of thinking that he did die. But I thought, so that's why I thought that was how it ended. But then the second time around watching it, actually, I noticed a part where Jimmy, like right before he's about to leave, he looks at a picture of a boat or something, and he like stays looking at it for a little bit, and then when he leaves, you see that he's like rowing away almost. And so in that way, I could kind of see that he probably just rode away. But I think to me, and I think it would make sense to me because as you can see, like earlier before, he's a little bit of an impulsive person, like, because he just decides to move into the house without like really securing anything about it. Like he decides to do all these things. He runs to the bank to ask the banker if he can like get money for it, even though he has nothing and he literally won't be able to pay anything off. So he is like a really impulsive person. And so like that's why this second time around, I think seeing him like on the boat almost made sense to me, because he's an impulsive person, so he's rowing off somewhere to find something else that interests him or catches his eye like that too. So I could see it that way, but I kind of like seeing it the pessimistic way too, just because
I think it's
I like seeing like a follow through of what someone's like passions and like really, really being dedicated to a singular thing, like what it really means to someone enough so that they don't feel like they want to live anymore. Like it sounds really dark and sad, but to an extent, like that amount of passion I kind of respect in characters because they dedicate their lives to something, and if they can't have that thing, they're not going to settle for anything less. So that's why I kind of like that ending better, but I can see both sides.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
but-
I also feel. Oh, go ahead, JJ.
No, just your point about the like, or Emma's point about like the positive like ending of him trying to find a new home. I think a positive interpretation kind of undercuts the whole message of the film.
I was
'cause-
gonna say that just now
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
just because like a positive like ending from this kind of story just doesn't
It's
work
too
for me.
weird,
It's
yeah.
gentrification. It's supposed to be about someone being forcefully removed from a place that they hold
Yeah.
so dearly to, and just him like going off to find something else just doesn't work. And
Yeah.
for me, if I want to
Yeah.
hold the movie together in my head like that, but if like he could still be alive, like him looking at the boat could just be him thinking about like I have to leave this place. Like I can't
Yeah.
like live here anymore. So he could have just left in a different way. And I think maybe it's just
Yeah.
Mont thinking that he took a boat away instead because
Exactly.
Mont has the attachment with the ocean because he was the one on the boat. He's the one who rehearses by the toxic water, not Jimmy. So I guess you could see Mont as thinking Jimmy's leaving by boat, but Jimmy left some other way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, also like, it would just seem like such a quick shift of mindset if you like kind of view it in like the positive way, because it goes from him being like devastated about the house, and then now he's like just leaving, which I mean it kind of makes sense, but it would really like I agree undermine the messages like in the film, I think as well.
Oh yeah.
But I kind of
agree.
like I mean both versions I like. But when I pictured like when I saw him on the boat, I pictured that as like Mont's what he pictures is happening. I kind of just thought, oh, he's probably on like a bus going somewhere or something. Like there's
Yeah.
nothing really glamorous or like magical.
He's
or
probably on a
very, like-
skateboard going down.
Yeah,
a
exactly.
freeway.
That's what I pictured. Like nothing grand or very like theatrical, just him leaving. Or even like you were saying, committing suicide. I feel like both of those make way more sense than just him sailing away on a boat.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I think like going back to JJ's point about how like it flows along with the idea of like gentrification and stuff too, is like him is of people being forced out of like where they're supposed to be. Him leaving is like another piece of San Francisco dying, like another
Yeah.
piece of its original, like the way it was supposed to be is another piece of it dying. If Jimmy dies or if he leaves, whatever actually ends up happening. And there's another quote that I wrote down that I thought kind of like illustrated that too, and it was about it was just about the house, and Mont was talking about it, and he says some millionaires probably want it because it looks nice, but you're the reason why it looks nice, Jimmy. And it kind of like ties together how the reason why the city is what it is because of the people who originally inhabited the place. Like that's why it has so much culture. That's where it gets all of its like unique personality almost as a city. But the people who live there don't recognize that just because it looks pretty and because they like it on a surface level and not deeper to where they can see exactly where all of it came from. They know the origins of it all. They're just there because of the surface like materialistic reasons.
Yeah.
And like the house feels like a materialistic need to Jimmy, but it just means so much more to him because he knows what went into it. To an extent, he knows what went into it. He knows what it means to him. So it's not a materialistic need to him.
Yeah.
A scene that I think really helps your point or really backs it up is like the scene where like Jimmy's waiting for the bus with the naked guy, and like this like group of like I don't know like party people show up, and they're on like one of the classic like cable cars, the trams, and they're just like partying on it, but it's not even like actually like in service or like it's actually on wheels. It's not one of the whatever like cable things, and it just shows them like on top of like the old culture that they built, and they're just like taking it for granted in a way, and they're using it for just like for partying. And
they're
this
using,
city,
like,
man,
this-
this city.
They're using a vehicle that was like part of the culture of the city and making fun of other parts of the culture of the city while they're like,
Yeah. It's interesting. It's definitely, it's really cool to like, well, I mean, that's not cool, but, but it's cool to like think about. I don't know. It's a cool message. Cool, like, scene to have. I feel like there's a lot of those scenes in the film where you just see it and they don't seem like incredibly important like at the moment, but when you're thinking about it later on, it's like those small scenes here and there that really bring the film together, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, so I guess we could move into just segments now and talk about our favorite scene in the film, because there are a lot of good scenes in this.
True.
The opening scene, obviously.
I was gonna say, I feel like we've talked about it a lot, and I feel like it's a
Yeah,
lot
that's
of
why I
our
feel-
But
favorite.
it's such a talkable point, though.
Talkable,
Yeah,
because it's just,
talkable.
it's a short film at the start of the movie, which is like the cliche
Yeah.
for opening scenes. But
Yeah.
it really is, and it really just sums up it's the entire movie in the first 5 minutes, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's great. But I guess we could just throw out maybe other parts of the movie that we liked real quick.
I
I'll
love the
just start-
play.
Oh yeah, the play is great.
I like it a lot.
One-man plays are very interesting to watch.
Really, I love one-man plays. I've seen a couple of them, and I've enjoyed both of the ones that I've seen. They're really good.
One of my favorite details was the guy singing the San Francisco song. Like Mont
Oh,
brought him
I
in to
love
sing
it.
background in his play, like to sing.
yeah.
I thought that was really nice. I just love that scene too, because when he's done, he's
Same.
like, "You got any other songs?" And it's like, "I got 5 on," and they just dance real quick.
Yeah.
This is a nice little moment.
That's
but I think
Yeah, and
Probably.
that's his actual original song, I think. Like it's a reference to that singer's actual song
that's
Oh.
really cool.
in real life.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the play is probably like as we normally refer to it as the scene that you would watch on YouTube later on. That's probably the scene that I would watch. I just love it. I think it's one of the coolest parts. I love the opening as well, but I feel that I was more drawn to the play.
Favorite scenes. Ooh, I don't know. There's so many. I really like the scenes. Okay, so like obviously the opening scene when the music starts up and they're just like going through the city and like on the skateboard together and things, and just that
They're
whole,
double riding a
whole
skateboard.
segment.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
hard.
They actually made a larger skateboard so that they could
That's
both
funny.
ride on it, which makes sense. But yeah, just like going through the entire city, because it introduces the city to you. And actually, like I think that scene, because I've been to San Francisco like several times too, and like I haven't been there recently, but it always like has this kind of nostalgic feel to me either way, and like the way they introduced it kind of like captures it all, because you see those types of like people out, like you see the people like frowning at them just riding past, and it's really funny because you like those are the people you recognize in San Francisco, not like the OG like African American community and stuff too. So you feel like those are the people that characterize it when you first like visit San Francisco, but that's not like where the personality comes from and stuff. So I thought that was cool, and it's just so pretty to look at. Like every shot in that looks like a painting to me, and yeah, it's just really gorgeous. And then I think another one is like when they're first in the house and Jimmy's just like they're just like running through the house, and like you don't even see them running, you see shadows running through. I thought it was really pretty.
I love that
And
scene
when
too. That one's really like it's a really fun scene to watch. I love that one.
Yeah, because they're like little kids just like running through like a playground or something, and they're just so excited.
Mhm.
And it's just such a like pure moment, because they're like, finally we get to be in this place that we've been like idolizing for so long. And yeah, just them like hanging out in there, and just how beautiful the house is. It's so gorgeous. Like
Yeah,
I
it's-
think I would be obsessed with the house too if I was him. Like actually.
That's the first time like we as an audience also like see the inside of the house too. Like
Exactly.
from that point,
yeah.
it was always like on the outside and looking in.
Yeah,
I
and
haven't-
I think
I-
as if
Oh, go
Yeah, go
ahead
ahead.
if you had more. No, because I was going to
No, that's
transition
fine,
into
sorry.
the next part.
Yeah.
That's fine, but then you don't get to say your part.
okay, it's fine, it's fine. I can bring up my thing later. It's fine.
Okay, but I have another scene that I really like, but it kind of leads into like my problems with the movie, because I do have some problems with it. And it's the scene where like they find out Kofi got shot. It's like it starts off like with the freaking lackey boys. It's like it's hard for me to take them seriously, but that's the part where I really took them seriously. It's like they're like really
Yeah.
sad, and and then they start pressuring their friend to like go up against Jimmy, whose acting is amazing in this scene. He's just like, who shot him, you know? And it's like such a great moment of like humanity. Like even though this guy was like cussing him out and it was like the last thing he heard from his friend, he still like really like cared about what happened to him. And then they're like the lackeys are telling the one guy to like come on, like, you're gonna let him say that to you? And then like when he's about to say something, he just starts crying, and then he puts his like head on his shoulder, and it's just like a really, that's one of like the biggest heartbreak of the movie to me. That's
Yeah.
like when I felt the most sad, and I thought it was a really great scene. But in terms of like me leading into like nitpicks, the whole B story with like toxic masculinity was a theme that I thought the movie was kind of surface level. It's like I've seen this kind of masculinity message done before in better movies. I don't
Yeah,
want
I
to say
agree.
Moonlight, but like Moonlight's kind of like the prime example of movies like that.
Yeah.
And like this B story kind of does take over the second half of the film for me, which is why I'm not as invested as I am in the first half. But I know they say people are more than one thing, and like this movie's trying to be more than one thing. But
Yeah,
I feel like the movie would have been stronger if it was just the one thing.
I 100% agree. Like, that is probably my biggest nitpick as well with the film. When I watched it the first time around, it kind of just like jumps into this other like storyline kind of halfway through. In a way, not really though, but it changes themes pretty quickly. And I was a little caught off guard the first time around. The second time around, I knew like it was coming, so it was different. But I would have preferred if, I mean, if they like picked one over the other, or not even like that, but tried to incorporate it a little bit better, like right off the bat at the beginning, like because you can have both. Because I feel
Yeah.
like they can both like coincide with one another, but at the same time, the way that it was done is a little bit like sloppy and a little sudden.
Yeah, I don't think it was bad, and you definitely could have that theme. Maybe if they like incorporated it more with the gentrification, because it seemed like two different
Exactly.
stories.
It did,
Um,
and it was a little hard to watch. Like not like hard to watch and like, oh, it's hard to watch, but it took away from the film that I was like really into at the beginning.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I felt that way too. Just because I think that they also don't dedicate enough of the characters, enough of those characters, like
Yeah.
to make you feel connected to them. So I didn't feel any really real attachment to Kofi, like how Jimmy must have felt to him. Like I don't feel a complicated relationship between them. I just feel like Kofi was this like guy
Yeah,
that like
side
switched
character.
between like his opinions and things. Like I didn't feel any attachment to him, so I didn't feel sad when he died, but I admired their like effort in trying to introduce like and talk about toxic masculinity part 2, but they don't really like go too deep into it so that like the characters actually learn from their mistakes. Like even when
Exactly.
they're reflecting on his death during the play and stuff too, when Mont is like asking people around like in the audience, it doesn't feel like people really like understood that like one of the reasons why Kofi died was because of toxic masculinity. They just kind of were like, oh yeah, I remembered him as this and that's it. Kind of.
Yeah,
And so
and
that
it's-
for me, that's why that kind of like drew it away from me.
Yeah, the play seemed like more of a message on like commentary after like a shooting or something like that, and people like using it for clout more than that's like the message I got from the play. I'd say that's why like that, even though that scene is like a culmination of like all the three stories, because like the house gets brought up, the whole gentrification aspect, and Kofi getting shot, just all like coming together. Even though it is a great scene in that aspect, like it doesn't feel as connected as I want it to be, which is why the play wasn't one of my favorite. Why I didn't mention it as that. Even though it is a good scene.
Yeah. Like I feel like if the writing had been a little bit different in that scene, it could have been like a lot better. Just because also like the people that are all sitting there are people that you've seen like throughout the entire film that you didn't even realize you saw. Like I noticed it the second time too. And it's like I don't know if you guys remember, but like on the bus or the Muni or whatever, there's this guy who talks about there's this like crazy old man who's like talking about this kid putting bubble gum on a seat or something. I don't know if you guys remember that, but he's like sitting in the audience later on, and I'm like, why do I like? Why is he sitting here? Like, I don't understand.
I feel like
and,
that makes sense because like the people they know would be the ones to show up.
Yeah,
play.
exactly. And it's just funny to me because it's like I felt like the play should have been a better representation of like the entire San Francisco that they saw, even if we didn't pay attention to all of it. Just like how the audience is like the entire San Francisco that we see, but we don't really like realize these people are like important in their lives too. So I felt like that part should have been a lot more like pivotal to me in terms of like just talking about San Francisco as a whole thing, because it's so like meta about like everything that they're talking about in the story too, like it
Oh,
both
yeah.
messages
Mhm.
too. Like it
And the
feels like it should
title
be
of the
more
play
connected.
being the title of the movie.
Yeah, you know, like it feels like it needs to feel more connected to everything that they saw and all of the themes, but it feels very just like Kofi died and now this is not your house.
Yeah, okay, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, agree. Okay. Yeah. So
I'll
sounds
get-
like we're
it's-
all
it's their
pretty on the
first-
same page though for the yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was all our biggest nitpick for the film. Well, it is their first movie, and I can see like
Yeah.
why they want to include so much though, because I know they have a lot to say, but
Exactly.
you know, it's hard to incorporate it like that.
It is. It's really hard. That's very difficult to even like if they had tried to do it earlier on and like combine them in the story, I feel like it's pretty like hit or miss type of situation where it could be amazing and it could be really good, or it could just be like two different films playing at the same time and they're like clashing. I don't know. It just depends. But overall, besides that, I would say I really liked it.
Yeah. So we can just end off with our favorite performance. I'll just to me it's between the two leads.
Yeah.
Go. You guys can go first.
Okay, yeah, for me the performances are I just think I love Jimmy Fails in this so much. Like also considering that it's his first movie like acting ever too. I think it's difficult to be acting like yourself in a movie because you don't know how you want to portray yourself particularly, but he's able to like do it in a way that you can see his flaws, and you can see like what he does that are good too. So I really enjoyed his performance, and it's just so convincing. Like you feel so connected to the story because of him and his passion and everything too. So
Exactly. I agree. And like you were saying, I would also agree. I think his performance was my favorite as well. And I feel like I've listened to so many interviews with many different actors, and all of them have said like it's always those over like exaggerated characters that are the easiest to play, but the ones that are most like yourself, it's hard because you have to like search within yourself to find what you want to bring to like the table and to the film, which is really hard because there's a lot of like searching in yourself to find like what makes you act the way that you are. I think it's way more difficult. And so I also agree. I think his performance is probably my favorite.
Yeah, and I think like knowing that he is really Jimmy Fails in real life and that this story really happened to him just makes the whole thing feel just more real than it already is.
Yeah.
And like him bringing that like passion to his performance that he probably really did bring in real life just makes the entire thing feel genuine. The authenticity, as you were speaking earlier, really comes together for me with Jimmy's character. And like he does a great job with even just the emotional scenes. Like I was talking about the scene where he finds out Kofi's shot. It just felt like a real human being to me. Even though Mont is like the guy who plays Mont. Sorry, is it Jonathan Majors? Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. But even though he does a great job, it just seems like the traditional like acting performance, if that makes any sense, because he even does like the one man play. So yeah, I would go with Jimmy as well.
Cool.
But yeah, that's the last black man in San Francisco, guys. Woo.
Yeah. Oh wait, actually, I just want to talk.
Yeah,
about
I was gonna
the
say
score
final
again really
thoughts.
quickly.
Yeah, I was gonna be like,
Oh,
hey,
yeah,
you guys wanna
final
say
thoughts.
anything else?
Yeah. So after I first watched the movie, so I do this thing with movies that I get really like affected by, where I listen to the score like obsessively after I've seen it because it like reinvigorates like the feelings of the film. And I just love the score like a lot for this one too. And if you actually listen to it on Spotify, there's a track at the very end where it's Jimmy telling the story about how he met Mont. So
Oh, whoa.
yeah, it's actually
Very
very
cool.
nice.
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Very nice.
Gotta check that out. That's
Yeah,
cool.
but
I'm excited for that.
yeah, the score is just so beautiful though, and my favorite track is "Bombing California Street" because it's the scene when he's bombing California Street. Like he's,
Yeah.
skating
where
down,
he's skating down it, and it's just
which is
so,
crazy
like,
to me. Can't believe people
Yeah.
do that. That's
That's
those hills are so
insane.
steep, insane.
No
And then
way.
they bomb it together. There's in the opening scene they both
They
are
do.
going down.
I know.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Oh god. No.
I would die. Well, I like there is a scene where he does fall down.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
felt
me too.
like it's like that happens, you know.
I know-
But it's also like an
yeah.
emotionally riveting moment because that's when he's like, I don't know what I
Yeah.
forgot what happened to that point. I think
No,
he
I know
got
what you're
kicked out.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Also, another thing I wanted to bring up too was in the cinematography they do a lot of like zoom ins and zoom outs, which I also was like a huge fan of. Because a lot of times I'm not a fan of it, but they do it really well, and I think it's just like a really pretty way to like show their environments and stuff too. Yeah, and also like there's a lot of parts where like the subjects like Jimmy and Mont just look so small in the frame and stuff too, like the way that they're framed, they look like very small parts of like a bigger whole, so it
Yeah.
really is like an ode to San Francisco.
Mhm.
And I thought that was like a cool way to show that too.
Definitely.
Yeah, I really love this movie.
yeah. I guess just real quick. I forgot to mention this, but just to talk about our La La Land guy. What's his name? Greg. I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry to the actor that
Greg.
we don't know his name. His name in the movie is like Clayton or whatever, Newsome.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, but just like seeing him, knowing that he's in La La Land, it's like you're just like, oh, there's something up with this guy. He's gonna be like bad for
Yeah.
them. But he's also in If Beale Street Can Talk, and he's like the good lawyer in that movie. So
Oh.
seeing him like being friendly, just seeing that actor at the scene is like, oh, is he gonna be good for them or is he gonna be bad? So it's very
Oh my
interesting to me.
god.
That is really interesting. Nice. Well-
I haven't seen Beale Street, so
Oh,
he's just
gotcha.
bad
Okay.
to me.
Okay, just bad.
Okay,
And
well-
he does turn bad, end up being bad for them.
Oh no.
Wow.
No, in the movie, in Last Black
Oh,
Man.
I thought you meant in Beale Street, and I was like, dang, this guy's terrible.
Like, wow, Greg, spoil that. Okay, actually, he's not bad in La La Land. He's just not interesting.
yeah.
It's not his fault. He just doesn't have a great personality.
He
Like,
hates
that's
movie
totally-
theaters. He's like
Okay.
they're too hot
like,
or they're too cold.
No, but at least he's not like a horrible person. He's kind of just there.
Yeah, it's kind of just there.
So it's fine, but like I know what you're talking about. I know what you mean. Like obviously he's Greg, and then you got Sebastian, and you're like, whoa. So
Yeah, we're putting up against
But-
Ryan Gosling. It's not really fair.
I know. Oh my god.
And he was good in this movie in terms of acting. All right. We're just
Yeah,
not to
exactly.
mention this
Yeah.
guy.
I'm so
La La
sorry.
Land.
Because we hate
To
him so
Greg.
much, so that means he was good.
I don't hate Greg, you know. Okay, well in this movie, yeah, but in La La Land, you know, he's fine.
He's like a nice stale piece of bread in La La
He
Land.
is,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
That's
just-
A-okay.
You know, live his life. Anyways, I think that's
Anyways,
our final
yeah,
thoughts.
I think that's a good place to end it.
Cool.
But yeah, thanks for the recommendation, Parvati.
Yeah,
it was
definitely.
it was good to revisit this one. I definitely think I liked it
Mhm.
much more the second time
Yay.
around. Yeah.
I'm glad we could make this episode. I really like this movie.
And
And
Yeah.
I feel like recently it's been really hard for me to get really attached to movies like this, so I'm really happy about this one.